Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and yesterday Lord Rothschild stepped down after 30 years at RIT Capital Partners. I don't know if this means anything, but it's something I just had to mention. And here's something else that I just had to mention. Ian Northing tweeted this out. Oh, hello, Barry. This is from Barry Silbert, a tweet from today. The decoupling, hashtag, excuse me, hashtag Plan B. When I see the decoupling, hashtag Plan B, what I see now, remember who Barry Silbert is, folks. Barry Silbert is the CEO of the Digital Currency Group. The Digital Currency Group is probably the most connected venture capital firm in blockchain. They're invested in everything from Ripple to Coinbase, early investors. And he also has Larry Summers, who's connected all the way to the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, connected all the way up to globally to the IMF, the World Economic Forum, and all of that, okay? He's on the board at the Digital Currency Group, and he's also spread out all over this blockchain thing. But Barry Silbert, who's the CEO, is tweeting this out. Now, when I see the decoupling, Plan B, I see financial reset. I see decoupling from the old financial system to the new. That's what I hear when I see this being said. All right. I just wanted to mention that for what it's worth. Now, this was a tweet from Ripple yesterday, or 11 hours ago, if that's yesterday, I guess. Through our partnership with D-Money, over 1 million Thais working globally can now transfer money back home at the lowest fees and best rates. XRP Crypto Wolf comes in and says D-Money provides same-day settlement into all Thai bank accounts, making it an effective payout partner for international remittance companies. With RippleNet, the transfer is more efficient for sending money from the growing number of financial institutions at the best rates. Let me pull up a screen here before I forget. All right, and so let's move along here. Brad Garlinghouse tweeted this out today. Now, if there's a word that I'm not allowed to say, I'm not going to say it. He says, like many businesses, Ripple's highest priority is the well-being of Team Ripple. This developed over the past several months. The global team has transitioned to remote work in efforts to stay safe while continuing to support our customers. In this unprecedented new reality, it's critical that we not forget those who are in need. We at Ripple are doing all we can for our customers around the globe to ensure individuals can continue to send money home to loved ones in a time they need it most. Our global economy is in uncharted waters, but what I've learned from history, markets are extremely resilient. No one has all the answers, but in times like this, we can always be kind to one another. Remember, no matter where you are, we're in this together. I thought that was a really good tweet for Brad Garlinghouse to send out. Then from Heo Seiko Carmona, who I probably mispronounce his name every time I say it. He sent me this. Ashish Burla, it says, was pleased chatting with you. And this is Randy Zuckerberg. Now, this is the sister of Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. Was pleasure chatting with you, Randy Zuckerberg. May joke a lot, but in all seriousness, it's times like these to reflect on whether what you're doing is actually solving a problem for someone. Product folks, we need more of you in this space. Let's build tech that matters. Now, this Randy Zuckerberg, who interviewed Ashish Burla, then has got her feed on Twitter peppered with all of this pro-Ripple stuff. The future is not something to be predicted, it's something to be achieved. Blockchain is a way to program scarcity in digital assets. It will impact financial services beyond the internet impact. Blockchain is a lot more than nifty new technology and is a lot more than Bitcoin. And then she says, I launched the Blockchain Research Institute with my dad. some of these are quotes from Ashish Burla. I think you'll get to them right now. I think Ripple will be really taking off in the next 2 years. The world order will be reshuffled using the blockchain technology. I think Asia will lead the pack, and that's from Ashish Burla. But look at this. The world order will be reshuffled. How about them apples, folks? Here's another one from him. This is from her interview with him. The whole point of blockchain is that you're removing the intermediary, whether that be the banks or other financial institutions. If you can't point to how you're removing that intermediary from your business, you need to go back to the drawing board. And then he says, identify how your product is better by using blockchain and really focus on that. We need entrepreneurs focused on solving real problems with blockchain. Ripple's mission was to efficiently and safely move money as quickly as information moves today. Now, this is Ashish Burla talking right here, folks. These are great tweets here. I found the Amazon of blockchain with Ripple. We've heard that kind of talk before. And then this is also from him. I made a smart decision to join a startup that was involved in the internet wave right out of college. I loved being involved in something that was creating something out of nothing. And then blockchain made me feel the same way. When you use your iPhone, you're using IP technology and payments are moving around the world. People don't even know that Ripple makes their payments more effective and that a fantastic thing because it's a frictionless motion. I'm excited that we're seeing real world adoption. The technology is really improving. We're using digital assets to move money more effectively across borders. Ripple is revolutionizing the way payments move. And I think that's pretty much it. But I mean, those are some great quotes out of Ashish Burla. Okay, moving along. Mike Preston sent me this. So this is a tweet where this person says, so Randy Zuckerberg, sister of Mark, is nonstop reposting positive Ripple-oriented tweets. You'd think if anything, she'd be shilling Libra. That's just because she knows. She's been enlightened. Okay, Cryptopolis. Let's get to the economy a little bit. Cryptopolis. Credit Suisse said that at the end of 2019, there was $230 trillion of wealth around the world. And there's $253 trillion of debt in the world. So assets minus liabilities equal net worth. So the world has a current net worth of negative $23 billion. Conclusion, the world is bankrupt. Makes a good point. And then, let's see. Come on, I hope the old internet's not hiccuping here. Let me do a refresh here. It looks like this. Yeah, here we go. An XRP crypto wolf tweet. The New York Stock Exchange to temporarily close its trading floor and move to fully electronic trading on March the 23rd. Many things are happening around the world with stimulus packages, shutdowns, and that word. This all feels like a movie, but how will it end? Now, a guy who's been calling for this type of thing to happen in the world for a long time is Jim Rickards. I wanted to play you a clip. This Kitco News, they interviewed him yesterday. Listen to what he says.
What ammunition, if any, does the Fed have here, Jim? Is it just all out the window at this point?
Yes, the Fed has no ammunition for stimulus. You can forget any help with stimulus or growth coming from the Fed. Now, the Fed can do two things, which is what they're doing. They can keep the plumbing open. They can keep the payment system open. So when you make repo facilities available, when you buy long-term, when the Fed buys long-term assets, when they make special credit facilities available to the primary dealers, which they've done, when they prop up the money market funds, which they've done. These are things like right out of the 2008 playbook, and obviously lowering interest rates to zero. All those things, they don't provide any stimulus, but they do, at least for now, keep the system from freezing up. So they're doing that job of keeping the plumbing open so the payment system can continue and people can finance things. But that's not stimulus. That's not, first of all, it's not a vaccine. And secondly, it doesn't make anyone want to go to dinner tonight. For that, you have to look to fiscal policy, which we are, but there's a constraint there. I mean, are they going to spend $1 trillion? Yes. Now, but bear in mind, we already had $1 trillion deficit. Now for fiscal 2020, now you're looking at another trillion on top of that. So a $2 trillion deficit, 10% of, almost 10% of GDP, by the way. And they're going to do it, and they're going to spend the money and make the loans in the way I described, but it's not going to provide the stimulus. And the reason for that is the debt to GDP ratio is 106%. It's very good. It's going to now go to 115%. We're going to look like Greece. But the point is, there's good research from Ken Rogoff at Harvard and Carmen Reinhart, who's now at Harvard. She was at the University of Maryland. That says once you get past 90%, diminishing marginal returns, your Keynesian multiplier is actually negative. Like you can borrow $1 and spend $1. In the old days, you'd say I get $1.25 of GDP for my dollar. Now you get like 90 cents. So it's not. It's too late. We're too indebted to have a stimulus effect. So safe
to say we're headed for recession, Jim?
Yeah, I think the recession call, this has happened very quickly, but I think there's no way to avoid that. The question is, will it be a depression and how bad will it get? The bigger question is, let's just say I've seen numbers, GDP could drop 10% in the second quarter. Well, it might. I mean, I'm not going to rule that out. The question is, how quickly does it come back? And, remember in 2009, 2010, I'm sure you recall, green shoots, everything was green shoots. Well, they talked about that for 5 years, and then they dropped the subject. There were no green shoots. Today, you're hearing Mnuchin and others and Larry Kudlow use the phrase pent-up demand. Well, there's no pent-up demand. I mean, if I stay home and...
Okay. So I just wanted to show you that from Jim Rickards. This he's been pretty well calling things. Now I want to switch gears to how bold that Ripple has been during this thing at the very beginning, and I'll show you that in a second. But yesterday, this comes out, and it was another one of those moments where I don't know if this is from this morning. 5:48 a.m. So this article comes out, and it's from the Daily Hodl, and Michael at VAL5 Links put a quote in there from this article. We believe that blockchain technology is the deconstruction of finance down to its core components, with payments being the first part through the implementation of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. And so let's look at what this is. This was a Daily Hodl article, but they were talking, they were basically just quoting this article from Warren Paul Anderson. Now, Warren Paul Anderson works at Ripple, and he wrote this, and he wrote it on a Spring blog, I guess. Deconstructing finance. Now, folks, words mean things, okay? I want to show you that I've seen two or three things come out of Ripple at the beginning and in the midst of this economy we're looking at that's collapsing. I've seen two things come out, and I'm like, who would say that? Only someone with extreme confidence in how they're positioned in this thing and what they represent in this systemic event that we are watching unfold. Only someone that's extremely confident about how they're positioned and what their role is in a systemic collapse would say the things they're saying. So let's scroll down this. Deconstructing finance. Look at what he says at the end here. We believe that blockchain technology is the deconstruction of finance down to its core components, with payments being the first part through the implementation of cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP. As the world braces for change in global economic conditions, we believe that blockchain technology can serve as an integral tool for developers to put the pieces back together, help us build a better financial world on Spring. Folks, I don't know about you, but what I've witnessed for the first time in my lifetime, this is even worse already from what I've seen in the financial crisis. What we are witnessing is the destruction of our business in the United States, and apparently it's going on around the world. They are shutting down the entire business world. I have friends who cannot make a living anymore. Their living has been shut down. You cannot do this without dire consequences. And this right here is pointing to what we've all known is the ultimate solution. And I'm going to show you today, I believe they've been building for this transition since the financial crisis. That's what I've believed for a long time, and I'm going to show you. But I don't think it's a coincidence that people out of Ripple are being this bold, or that they're being this bold. Remember this? This is when, now, and before I leave him, the guy that wrote this is Warren Paul Anderson. Look what it says in the title, the first thing in the title of his, on his Twitter feed. It says all the money, folks. It says all the money. The words mean things, folks. And when you're saying words like the deconstruction of finance as the world braces for change in global economic conditions, the blockchain technology is going to serve as the tool for developers to piece this back together. Are you kidding me? And then we had this. Don't forget this. This is from let's see what the date was on this. This is from March 9th as we began to go into this, folks. And this struck me too.
Attribute of a healthy liquid market is really resilience. And that is getting at the ability for a market to recover from a significant systemic event. Attribute of a...
You mean a systemic event like them shutting down all of the businesses in the entire world? All of the restaurants? I saw something the other day on the news. There was a guy in New York that he said they've shut down all the restaurants in New York City. And he said, this guy on CNBC, he says only 75% of those restaurants will never open again. How do you recover from that? The only way you recover from that is if you have a plan to reset the system. Otherwise, you are in a mega depression, folks. Sorry to say it, but this is not something anyone has ever seen in my lifetime and probably 3 lifetimes. What else has not been seen? Distributed ledger technology. All right. I mean, I'm just calling it like I see it here, folks. Now, I get this from Good Apollo. All right. In the midst of this, it says, this is an article, Be Greedy When Others Are Fearful, Bank of New York Mellon. This is an entire article about how Warren Buffett is, meanwhile, Warren Buffett, oh, I'm not selling anything. And it's an article about what a great investment BNY Mellon is. And down here it says, Buffett has historically been good at finding relative bargains in the stock market. Thus, looking at what Warren Buffett has been doing over the last couple of years could be a good way to find investment opportunities. When doing so, we see that he has been buying BNY Mellon. Remember, I've been showing you the last 2 weeks. BNY Mellon is at the very center of this change to distributed ledger technology and Ripple, folks. Bank of America, same thing, folks. And Goldman Sachs, but it's not just those. It's Jpmorgan. Now, I'm just going to name the ones that I recall, just from what I've covered the last 3 or 4 weeks. This is one thing that I'm not yet. I'm not doing it because I think this stock market is going to fall a lot more. But one thing I will be doing as all of this transitions on the side with some of my investments is some of these banks and companies that I know are heavily invested and are going to be right there and benefit from this shift to distributed ledger technology. And we've been covering them. Here's just the ones I'm looking at that are in the game. That these are companies that Warren Buffett owns too. American Express is in the DLT game. Apple's in it. Bank of America's in it. BNY Mellon is in it. I would not buy that one. I would not. That's not one. I mean, I'm not saying these are bad companies. I'm just saying not right now. But the ones I know that are in the DLT game, Goldman Sachs is, Jpmorgan is, I'm sure Moody's is, but I haven't shown that yet. I haven't really seen it yet. I'm not sure about US Bank Corp. Visa's in the game. Wells Fargo's in the game. So all of those companies, as they get just pummeled, their stock price, at some point, these are going to be tremendous buys. I'm going to be watching what people like Warren Buffett and people like that are buying, and with a focus on the companies that are going to benefit from this distributed ledger technology. And I just wanted to mention that for what it's worth. I also wanted to bring back to your attention about BNY Mellon. Don't forget, when TARP in the financial crisis of 2008, BNY Mellon was the trusted custodian. They handled the custodian. They were the custodian for the TARP program. So this is the company that was trusted by the Treasury during the financial crisis. Don't be surprised if they're not one of the trusted companies in this one. All right. Next, I just wanted to mention this for what it's worth. In looking at stocks, what I always find interesting to do is look at these stock heat maps. You can find them on, just do a Google search for stock heat map, where you can see some of the companies that have been pummeled the most. Like on a day, I'm not buying right now, but on a day that a Jpmorgan is one of the biggest losers, those are the kind of days that I would be buying if I was buying. But I think the stock market has a lot further to go, so I'm not buying anything right now. Now, let's move on. I Am Legion was apparently watching a couple of my videos over the last couple of days, and he's really good at bringing things to my attention that he's probably covered in the past that I wasn't even on until some of these guys like I Am Legion were on it. But he brought to my attention, he said, funny that both Anna Boden and Blythe Masters are at Santander now. Women, the New World Order. Now, he makes a very valid point here. Blythe Masters, who I'm going to talk about today. Now, remember who this is. Blythe Masters. She literally was one of the creators of derivatives. She was literally one of the people at ground zero of creating what ended up being responsible for the financial crisis of 2008. But the way the elites operate, folks, in politics and in elite banking systems, is these people don't pay for their mistakes. They're rewarded for their mistakes. I could show you numerous examples of politicians that before the financial crisis were literally making banks make loans to people that had no business buying homes. And those same people, one of them's Barney Frank. I'll never forget him because he's one of the more arrogant ones. And I'm not making a political statement. I think both sides of the aisle had equal blame in this whole thing. But Barney Frank was one of the more arrogant people who stood up. I could show you videos. The guy stood up and was very arrogant before the financial crisis about how there's nothing wrong with Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae and all that. And he presided over the thing. When it all collapsed, who did they get to create the bill to quote, fix the banking system? Was Dodd-Frank. So Barney Frank was one of the guys whose name was on the legislation to fix what he was a big part of the responsibility for what happened was because of him. And they put him in charge of fixing it. Not really any different here. This Blythe Masters was right there at the core of the financial crisis. And and I'm going to show you right now, who do they put in charge of basically like a Jpmorgan representative to go out and bring about the new technology to fix it? You know, whether you blame her or not is neither here nor there to me. I'm more interested in where I can invest to benefit from how these people operate. And it's pretty, a lot of it's disgusting, but anyway. So anyway, I Am Legion is making the point that is it a coincidence that some of the core figures in this global reset that we're looking at are women in this. Now remember, there's really three themes. It's a global reset to a new financial system. Women in business is an equality in the workplace. That is a big thing. And then climate change is a big thing. Think about this for a minute. So climate change pretty much takes Bitcoin out as a solution. We can all agree on that. That's pretty obvious. Women equality, as you go into this new paradigm, this new world order, it totally makes sense that they would have a Blythe Masters leading the way, that they would have an Anna Boden leading the way, right? Who is a customer of Ripple. And then who is the other core of those, you got those two women. Then you got Christine Lagarde, who runs the IMF. Okay. You think this is all coincidence? I mean, it's all happening right before our eyes, folks. Now, the IMF, back to the IMF High Level Advisory Group. I Am Legion made me aware of something I missed. Yesterday, I was going over with you how Jeremy Allaire, the chief executive officer of Circle, the three core fintech companies that are involved in this new world order, is Jeremy Allaire, Chris Larson of Ripple, and also I pointed to Blythe Masters, who was with Digital Asset Holdings, right? Well, he made me aware. He said, look, you forgot to mention that Not this one, not that one. I missed it. Hold on. I'm looking in the list trying to find where it was. I think it may have been further down the list. And that may have been why I missed it. It's in the list because here it is right here. Managing Director, Chief Information Officer, Dtcc. And remember, these guys are at the core of the traditional financial services system. I think they settled some crazy amount of money, like $1.6 quadrillion. Anyway, and their CEO is on the board at Digital Asset Holdings, as I recall. All right, let's move along. So who is Blythe Masters? And we've talked about her before, but let's really look at it and look at some of the things that she said. The woman who built financial weapon of mass destruction. This article was from September 29, 2008. Blythe Masters, Jpmorgan, developed the credit derivatives which were at the heart of the current financial crisis. We apologize for unfairly failing to give her an adequate opportunity to respond and for making inaccurate personal references about her. The guide to which we referred to was a general guide to credit derivatives, and not just about those she created. She was 34 rather than 35 when she became CFO of Jpmorgan, and she was not working in the hospital before having her baby, whatever. I don't know what they're correcting there. But if Warren Buffett is to be believed in his verdict that derivatives are financial weapons of mass destruction, then Blythe Masters is one of the destroyers of the worlds. British-born Masters is one of the most powerful women on Wall Street and is widely recognized as one of the elite group dubbed the Jpmorgan Mafia that fostered the creation of the complex credit derivatives at the heart of the current crisis ripping through Wall Street. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that part just to let you know who this woman is. Well, now she apparently sold out of where she was, and then where Magic Arcane sent me a couple of videos I'm going to show you. This is Blythe Masters Market Outlook. Let me see. I don't know if that was the one I was going to show you or not. Let me see. Okay. Let's go to, I can't remember if that's the one I was going to show you or not. Hold on. It's this one I'm going to show you. And then I'll show you this or this. No, we'll move that to there. All right. So we'll go to this now. And we're at the financial challenge of our time. Yeah, I want to show you this right here first. We're going to go to 1510. She is on stage at this Singularity University STEM Summits. And she's on stage with the guy from CNBC.
Right? No matter what, you give him a compliment and then smack. What do you mean, Bob? That's why you're not my old friend. Okay, let's start over again. You're one of the most powerful women on Wall Street. And I'm curious about how you sort of made this transition. How did you decide to leave Jpmorgan? Was there some epiphany when you looked at this business and said, oh my God, this is going to change the world? How did this happen?
Well, to be accurate, I left Jpmorgan having sold the business that I ran for them. And so actually there was a natural break in my career, and I took the opportunity to try to take some time off. I was planning on taking a year, and I was minding my own business. I made a self-imposed rule that said no board work until you know what your day job's going to be, because there might be a conflict or something. And then I made an exception for this strange little distributed ledger-y, Bitcoin-y company that I joined the board of.
And how did that happen?
2 months later, I was running the company.
Something happened there, right? I mean, it's that moment that I'm interested in.
It was the penny dropping on the subject of the systemic implications of the technology. I had understood a little bit from a distance about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. I had not really, until sometime late last summer or the fall, when I took the time to start thinking about this, free from my day job, to really appreciate the power of the technology. And having come to this with the perspective of seeing what happened during the financial crisis and what changed afterwards, it gave me, I think, a slightly different perspective from a wholesale point of view than many others. I realized that we've improved a lot about the financial world since 2008, but we've centralized, we've created more and larger single points of failure. We have reduced risk-absorbing capacity on balance sheets, and therefore the benefits associated with being able to reduce the length of time for which things stay on balance sheet is increasingly powerful. And it was when I began to think about all of that in the context of blockchain technology that I decided I thought this was incredibly powerful and interesting.
Okay. Now, I just realized I forgot to show you a video of her right after the financial crisis that I wanted to show you. This is in 2000. This is on 10/27/2009. Listen to this. Remember, she literally was a part of creating what caused the financial crisis, packaging all these mortgages. Listen to this. So this is right when she was about to go off and I mean, this is after this was when she went and got into distributed ledger technology. But after the financial crisis, she was still with Jpmorgan and was going to run this organization called SIFMA. And I'll go into that here in a second.
The biggest names in finance are at the Securities Industry and Financial Markets Association meeting in the Big Apple. On the list today, Tim Geithner, Jamie Dimon, Mary Shapiro, who we heard from in the last hour. Bob Pisani's there with another exclusive, Blythe Masters, one of the forces behind credit derivatives. Robert.
Thanks very much. She's rarely on here, but not only is she over at Jpmorgan running the commodities business, she's one of the experts on commodities. She's also the outgoing chairwoman of SIFMA. Blythe Masters joins us now. What a year you have had running SIFMA here. Just broad brush, what do you think SIFMA has done to restore investor confidence? Do you think investor confidence in the securities business in general is being restored?
It's a great question. I think the most important thing to acknowledge is that the industry understands the outrage and the anger that people feel as a result of the events of the last couple of years, and part of acknowledging that has helped us embrace the need for change. And SIFMA's working hard to try to be constructive in that sense, working with the various policymakers, the regulators, to ensure that the right policy decisions get made from here. And there are a lot of them that need to be made.
You have been with Jpmorgan your entire career, 20 years at Jpmorgan, and you've risen up the ranks. You were one of the forces behind the creation of derivatives, CDSs included. Looking back on what happened, give us a little bit of retrospective. What do you feel went right, and what do you think went wrong with credit derivatives, with credit default swaps and other derivatives? What can we do to fix it?
Well, importantly, derivatives as a tool are vital for many companies around the world. They affect risk management, the ability to create jobs and grow, and we can't lose sight of that in acknowledging that there are also issues. There are two big issues, however, that I think, with hindsight, should have been addressed sooner and are now going to be addressed relating to derivatives. Those include generally a lack of transparency, particularly to regulators. And secondly, a high degree of interconnectedness, which leads to systemic risk, meaning that if one part of the system, one company were to fail, the implications for others would be so difficult to assess and so significant that it would be problematic.
And yet, why wasn't the issue of systemic risk sort of addressed by the people who were creating that? Did that come up in the 90s when these were being invented? Anyone say, good heavens, if we got all these out here, it can create systemic risk. It gets past our ability to handle it.
Ironically, many, if not all, of the early pioneers of the credit derivative markets were themselves operating within the fabrics of regulated financial institutions, primarily banks. So I think part of the omission in the thinking was caused by the fact that the assumption was that all parties would be subject to the pre-existing regulatory framework that already governs banks. The sad thing is that that wasn't the case. So, for example, the likes of AIG emerged, became major players, but were largely, if not completely, unregulated, and therein lied the problem. That, in turn, is the reason why this industry and this economy needs a systemic risk regulator to capture that.
Very quickly, do you support derivatives being cleared and traded on exchanges? Are you in favor of that?
Central clearing and more of that is a positive thing. Mandating exchange trading in addition to that is an unnecessary addition. You get all the benefits in terms of reducing systemic risk through central clearing.
Very quickly, commodity prices, do you think...
Okay, that's enough of that. But I wanted you to see this is where she came from. Okay, so she's with Jpmorgan here. She was the chairman of this organization, SIFMA. SIFMA exists to advocate that America's capital markets operate effectively and efficiently to benefit all market participants. In other words, these guys they were at ground zero of this nightmare in the financial crisis of 2008. Then they appoint her as the chairman of this organization while she's still working for Jpmorgan. And who's in this organization? Everybody in finance is in this. Everybody who's anybody, that is. These are the board members. You see Citigroup, Edward Jones, B of A, you name it, they're here. UBS, BNY Mellon, Fidelity, Credit Suisse, BNB Paribas, Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, US Bank Corp, Deutsche Bank, RBC Capital Markets. They're all here. You see them. Wells Fargo, PNC, Morgan Stanley, Jpmorgan. Okay, but that's enough on that. I just wanted you to see that. And I find it ironic that the same guy that's interviewing her there is interviewing her here about DLT. Now, let's go back to, let me make sure I'm doing this in the right order. This is the next thing I wanted you to see. This is her talking a little bit more about distributed ledger. This is when she was given the speech part of this.
Context of an increasingly centralized regulated financial ecosystem, the rate of pace of transaction execution at the front end, if you will, of trading, continues to evolve almost to warp speed. Yet how ironic is it that the settlement of those transactions still lags by, in many cases, days, if not weeks? Some of you may be tweeting about what I'm speaking about, and someone in Sydney will probably have read about it by the time I sit down again. Those of you that just bought a stock on one of those iPhones won't be seeing it until at least next Friday.
Now, you must get the point she just made, that you can tweet something and information is instant. But she just made the point that settlement takes days, if not weeks, depending on what you're settling. And that is the point she just made. That is the point Ripple's been making since 2012 when they were created or whatever. But this right here, she's right there. Now remember, Digital Asset Holdings bought Hyperledger, and then my understanding is that they spun it out into an organization, but put themselves in the leadership role of Hyperledger. Ripple's a member, everybody's a member of Hyperledger who's in this game. All right, I'm going to let this go a little bit longer.
In this context of an increasingly electronified and high-speed financial system, operational resiliency has obviously become a significantly increased area of focus. Vulnerability to cyber attacks, operational failures have become a major focus not only of financial firms, but of course of their regulators and other market participants. The biggest challenge faced by many of the major financial institutions in the world today is the fact that they are tasked with processing, recording, reporting to regulators and otherwise, reconciling and auditing ever-increasing amounts of sensitive transaction information. And yet the legacy infrastructure that we use to do that is generally pretty outdated. It is centralized. It is protected by perimeter security that has proven subject to repeated breach. The data contained therein is generally unencrypted, so once you get through that perimeter security, if you manage it, it's available for your interference and understanding. Generally speaking, there's a hub and spoke model involved, and enormous amounts of cost are involved in continuously reconciling the same data that's kept in different places at different times in different locations around the world for different users so that everybody can keep up with it all and on top of it, and then figure out why it isn't all the same at the same time. Those of you who work in financial services, I think, know exactly what it is I'm talking about. Those of you who look at financial services from the outside and imagine a world where you have innovated that sector out of existence, listen carefully to what I'm talking about. It's not necessarily as simple as it might sound. So in this context, I want to introduce why I believe that distributed ledger technology is a tremendously exciting and powerful development. In fact, it's the sheer power of that technology that forced me or attracted me to run a tiny startup but innovative technology company after almost 30 years in financial services at one of the biggest organizations on the planet.
So anyway, I just wanted to show you kind of how she ended up there. Now, we also, I can also show you, I want to show you this one, and then we'll move on. This, by the way, is the Dtcc Blockchain Symposium. This is in 2016. And the video, by the way, that we just showed you was from 2015. This is 2016.
Task in hand actually is, what is the major obstacle to adoption here? And everybody correctly cites lack of standardization or the challenge of reaching standards as an obstacle. That's correct. But I believe that equally, without trying, you don't have the ingredients that will propel organizations to reach and create forums to reach standards. You've obviously seen during the course of the last year to 18 months the first serious undertakings in terms of multi-party trials of this technology, albeit in an mostly experimental context. But that has led directly to collaborative work, whether it was the multi-bank, multi-technology provider experiment conducted by R3 recently, which has been mentioned a couple of times, non-trivial organizational undertaking, or whether it's the Hyperledger Foundation work, where now we have different technology providers and customers actually contributing code and looking to harmonize that code into a common starting point. The reason why that's happening now is people are actually trying to do real things with this technology.
So they're basically talking about this being open source and how, and she said something about a standard. Well, this all relates back to the charts we've shown you. This is to the Internet of Value, ILP standard protocol, that, and then right after that comes in that's digital asset holdings. This is Hyperledger Fabric, R3. She mentioned all of that. So you can see how all this is, these people have been working together. Then when you go down here, the Hyperledger, it shows all these companies we've been talking about. They're all in the game. BNY Mellon, DTCC, Digital Asset, R3, all these names, CME Group. And then it all ends here, folks, or begins, with however you want to look at it, 2020 to 2025. And then you've got this XRP ledger at the center of it all, folks. This is what we're talking about. Now, I wanted to go back up to the timeline just to make one other little point here. To the Internet of Value, 2009, Bitcoin is invented, first blockchain. Ripple is born, first currency agnostic blockchain, 2012. Well, this is a little timeline of the financial crisis. The collapse of Lehman Brothers kicks in global crisis into high gear, 2008. And then our timeline here, so 2008, and then Blythe Masters is talking about how she went to this organization in 2009. Or around 2009, she was the chairman of this SIFMA, where they began hashing all this out. And then in 2009, Bitcoin comes out. In 2009, you saw a lot of the European countries start to unravel with debt, their debt crises. But right in here, folks, it's not a coincidence that in that same time range that both Bitcoin and Ripple are born. Okay, can't be underestimated. Now, I'm going to finish this video by reminding you they've got 2,048 chances to get a 20 to 25% discount on Ledger, the Ledger Nano S or the Ledger X. Now, in the description of every video I do, you can find a link to get to this. But I haven't specifically told you how this works. Basically, they've got a link right here. It says, here's the list. And that list is a list of 2,048 words, and I'm sure these are all the words they use, different combinations of words for security on the Ledger Nano S. You can go down this list out of this 2,048 words, and you can pick, when you go to checkout to get the discount, you can enter one of these words. And if it's already been taken, if someone's already used that word for the discount, then you can pick another word and see if you can get one of these discounts. That's how they're doing this. It's really cool. So go in the description of any of my videos and you can get a shot at having this discount. Really cool idea. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and families that this timeline is everything. Show your family this timeline. Thank you for listening.